You won't believe what happened in this quiet neighborhood. It all started with a knock on the door, but things quickly spiraled out of control. Picture this: a calm afternoon, families enjoying their day, when suddenly the peace is shattered by a frantic HOA member who's calling the cops, insisting my son is innocent. But there's a twist. The truth isn't quite as simple as she claims. Right there, parked outside, was my Harley, and it had already seen everything. Somehow, that motorcycle held the key to unraveling the whole story, exposing details no one expected. This isn't just another typical neighborhood dispute. It's a clash of trust, family loyalty, and unexpected evidence rolling in on two wheels. You're about to hear the story of a mom who's convinced her kid did nothing wrong. Even as the silent witness, my Harley tells a very different tale. What really happened? Who's hiding the truth? And why did things escalate to the point of calling the police? I'm not here just to tell you what happened. I want you to feel the tension, the confusion, and the shock that rippled through our community that day. There were whispers, looks exchanged, and a whole lot of questions left unanswered. As the story unfolds, you'll see how one family's fight to protect their own collides with hard evidence that can't be ignored. It's messy, it's real, and it's a reminder that sometimes the quietest moments hide the biggest secrets. Stick around, because in the next part, I'll break down what my Harley witnessed, why it matters, and how this story is far from over. You won't want to miss how it all unfolds. Trust me, this is one neighborhood drama you've never seen coming, so here's how things got even more complicated. The neighborhood we live in is usually peaceful, quiet streets, friendly faces, and the usual HOA rules that most people barely notice, but every community has its tensions, and ours was no different. The woman who called the cops, let's just call her Karen, is well known around here. She's the kind of person who watches everything closely, always ready to step in if she thinks the rules aren't being followed. And when it comes to her son, she's fiercely protective. That afternoon, Karen's son was accused of something serious, something that shook the neighborhood's calm. She was quick to defend him, shouting that he was innocent and demanding the police prove otherwise. But the problem was, the story didn't add up. And that's where my Harley comes in. I had parked it nearby, and thanks to some scratches and marks on the bike, it became clear that it had been caught right in the middle of whatever happened. Those marks weren't just random. They were clues, silent witnesses to an event no one was ready to talk about yet. What made it even more tense was how divided the neighbors were. Some believed Karen without hesitation because they've known her family for years. Others thought the evidence on my Harley told a different story, one that didn't paint her son in such a clean light. The HOA meetings that followed were filled with hushed conversations, suspicious glances, and a lot of he said, she said arguments stopped behind the scenes. People were asking questions no one wanted to answer. What really happened that day? Was it an accident or something more? Why did Karen feel the need to call the cops so quickly? And how did my Harley get involved in the middle of all this? The mystery was growing and the tension was thick in the air. Everyone was waiting for the truth to come out, but no one knew how deep this story would go. And as the days passed, things only got more complicated. What made the situation even more tangled was how everyone started picking sides. Some neighbors had always been close to Karen's family, so they were quick to believe her son was innocent. No way would he do anything wrong, right? But others, especially those who noticed the marks on my Harley, began to question the story. They wondered if maybe the truth was hiding behind the angry words and desperate calls to the cops. One neighbor, quiet guy who usually kept to himself, mentioned he saw something suspicious earlier that day, but was too nervous to speak up at first. Another family, who'd had previous run-ins with Karen's son, were convinced he'd caused trouble before, and this might be no different. The HOA, caught in the middle of the drama, was struggling to keep the peace, but every meeting just seemed to stir the pot more. Meanwhile, Karen was doubling down on her defense, insisting that her son had nothing to do with whatever happened to my Harley. She claimed it was all a misunderstanding, but her tone hinted at something deeper, like she was afraid something else might come out if the police dug too deep. Her son, quiet and withdrawn, barely said a word, which only added to the suspicion. Was he hiding something, or was he just overwhelmed by the whole ordeal? On my end, I kept examining the scratches and dents on the Harley, trying to piece together what had happened. Each mark seemed to tell a different part of the story, but none of it made sense yet. It felt like the bike was holding onto a secret, one that might blow everything wide open if I could just figure it out. As days passed, the tension in the neighborhood grew. People stopped waving hello. Meetings turned into heated arguments, and trust became a rare thing. The cops were involved, but with no clear answers. The situation felt like it was on the edge of boiling over, and somewhere in all this mess, the real truth was waiting, locked away behind silence, fear, and maybe even a lie or two. What happens next? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Every day after that felt heavier, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for something to explode. Karen's calls to the cops had stirred up more than just a simple investigation. They had opened a door that no one knew how to close. People whispered behind closed doors, and eyes darted nervously whenever Karen's family walked by. Tension was thick enough to cut through my Harley, parked just where it had been when everything went down, had become the silent centerpiece of the drama. Every scratch and dent seemed to tell a story I couldn't fully understand yet. But one thing was clear, wasn't just a random accident. The evidence was staring me right in the face, but Karen's fierce insistence on her son's innocence was making the truth harder to reach. It felt like everyone was waiting for a spark to set off a fire, but no one wanted to be the one to light it. The neighbors who had been quiet before started coming forward with bits and pieces they'd seen or heard, snippets of arguments, strange noises late at night, and sudden disappearances from the usual routine. Some swore they saw Karen's son near the bike around the time it got damaged, but no one wanted to say it out loud. The HOA meetings became battlegrounds, with voices raised, fingers pointed, and loyalties tested. Karen, desperate and furious, pushed harder for the police to clear her son's name. But the more she fought, the more it seemed like she was hiding something, a secret that could change everything. Her son's silence only made things worse. Was it guilt, fear, or something else? At the same time, I kept going over every detail on my Harley, trying to put the puzzle pieces together. The closer I got, the more dangerous it felt. The neighborhood was ready to snap, and I could sense that whatever was about to come next wasn't just going to expose the truth, it was going to change everything. The question was, who would break first? And what would the fallout look like when they did? Just when it felt like the tension couldn't get any worse, something unexpected happened, something that shook the whole neighborhood to its core. Late one evening, as I was checking the damage on my Harley once again, I noticed something new. A small folded piece of paper tucked under the seat, like it had been left there on purpose. First, I thought maybe it was just trash, but when I unfolded it, my heart skipped a beat. It was a note, and the message inside hinted at something nobody had dared to say out loud. The note wasn't just some random scribble. It suggested that Karen's son might not be the only one involved in whatever went down that day. In fact, it pointed towards someone else entirely, someone unexpected. Suddenly, the neat little story we thought we were chasing started to unravel, revealing layers none of us saw coming. This wasn't just about defending a kid anymore. It was about secrets the whole neighborhood had been hiding, and the stakes were much higher than anyone realized. Word of the note spread fast, but no one knew where it came from or who had left it. The police were called again, this time with a new angle to investigate, and the neighborhood buzzed with a mix of fear and curiosity. Everyone was watching everyone else, trying to figure out who else could be tied to the mystery. The once tight-knit community started feeling like a house of cards, ready to collapse at the slightest touch. Meanwhile, Karen's defense became even more desperate. She clung to her version of the story like a lifeline, but cracks were starting to show. Her son's silence now seemed less like fear and more like something else, maybe guilt, or maybe a secret he was too afraid to reveal. And with this new twist, the question wasn't just about innocence anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and just how far people would go to protect their own as the pressure mounted. The quiet neighborhood was anything but peaceful. Everyone was waiting for the next move, but no one knew who would make it, or how explosive it would be. The tension finally reached its breaking point one evening when the police called a meeting at the neighborhood clubhouse. Everyone was there: Karen, her son, the neighbors who had been watching from the sidelines, and